Hey everybody, new shelf who dis. I have recently been very busy, which is why I've not uploaded anything to YouTube of recent. But I have reorganized my shelves to be generally rainbow with a favorite shelf up there and a shopped TBR shelf over this way that you can't see in frame. So you guys should hopefully, assuming I actually film these videos, be given content that will kind of break all of the shelves down. Maybe a bookshelf tour, maybe not. I might also do a tour by color to help me a little bit and for it to be less intense. And it will never ever be that one where you pull out every single book because that seems like a lot of work that I'm not going to do. But I know for sure I will do a video with my favorite shelf, and that will be really fun. But I kind of just wanted to hop back in and do a mini wrap-up for some of the books that I've read this year. I honestly could not tell you if I've done a wrap-up at all this year, but I'm probably going to rapid-fire the 17 books that I've read so far this year. It's mid-March, and I'm a little slower on my reading than I usually am at this point, but I'm technically still one book ahead of my Goodreads goal of 76 books for the year. So yeah, I'm not going to, again, hold the books up because I did not prepare for this at all. I just sat down after work. So, of the books that I've read this year, I will admit a lot of them were audiobooks, and that's totally valid reading in my opinion, and if you disagree with me or shame other people for reading audiobooks, that's not the vibe in this safe reading space. All books and book editions and book varieties and ways to consume literature are super welcome. But of the 17 books I've read, I have read book 5 and 6 of The Expanse, which the third one because I have the other two at my parents' house is on my favorite shelf. I've been really enjoying that book series, so I read Nemesis Games and Babylon's Ashes, and I believe there's a time jump between books 6 and 7. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I've really been enjoying the books and the show now that I've watched kind of all of the available... I've read up to the available television content. I'm kind of going back to finish the show. Also, a dog might join us. No peace leaving the office. And I've really enjoyed them, and God, do I love Naomi. She's, I think, my favorite character from that series, but I also do love her and Holden. Oh, here's the dog. But, I love her and Holden's relationship, and kind of I love the whole little family aspect, including Amos and Alex and the other people that they gather along the way, and those books are really great. I think if you're wanting to read more sci-fi, to not be intimidated by the amount of books. They're super fast-paced, and they're really good reads. I believe I gave them both 5 stars. I also finished Crime and Punishment by Theodore Dostoevsky, and did enjoy that a lot. It was definitely a heavy read, definitely a read that took me a while, but good nonetheless. I did enjoy the audiobook format for that. I found with some Russian novels, either reading it physically with the audiobook or doing an audiobook are helpful because of all of the names, and certain people will have different names in different settings, and also just pronunciations and stuff. It's really helped me with the few Russian books I've read. I've read 3 nonfiction books, I believe. The Radium Girls, A Dark Story of America's Shining Women by Kate Moore. That book was really good, and I enjoyed it a lot. Very brutal and disgusting in terms of the descriptions about how the women get sick and die from radium poisoning, but I think very necessary in terms of explaining what the women went through and why they had to end up going to bat for themselves because no one else was going to, and how they eventually get some semblance of justice. I think the women obviously deserve more, but the patriarchal society that we live in. And on that note, I also read the book Unwell Women. My phone just turned off, sorry. It is by... It's Unwell Women, Misdiagnosis and Myth in a Man-Made World by Eleanor Cleghorn, and it was also hard to read, and I think everybody should read that book, Man, Woman, Child. Maybe not super young child, but like late teenagers. Everybody should read that book because it'll help. The more people that read books on topics like this that I feel like are written by women for women who have gone through problems, are read a lot by women, but other people besides women need to be reading them so that way they can some of the issues can actually be addressed in a whole society way, not just a like female gender pushing it forward way, because it really does suck. Like the way the healthcare industry from the beginning didn't necessarily like back to so this book basically goes like in a few different eras. So it's like ancient Greeks to 1700s, the next few centuries, and then like 1950s to present or something like that. And how you can see all the way back in the literature of the people that first were doing things with medicine and discovering things about the body. They were just like, oh, we don't want to mess with this uterus, and it does magic things, and that's great. But we don't know what other things it does to the body, and we just assume everything else that's wrong with these people with uteruses are because of that. So that initial mindset really destroyed, like, how medicine progressed for women. And there's starting to be a lot more research on, like, women's bodies and things like that, and, like, the health problems that they might have that are different, and the fact that, like, most people, a large majority of people who are immune compromised in some form or fashion with like lupus or different autoimmune diseases are actually women, and their pain hasn't been validated for so long. That's why all of a sudden there like is a outburst of people that are being diagnosed with these things because they've been undiagnosed for decades. And these women have been suffering for decades and passing things on to their children unknowingly for decades. So moral of the story is this was a hard book to read, but I think everybody needs to read it, and it was intense and it was good stuff. And from your fellow unwell woman, I enjoyed like getting some validation for the experiences that I've had in doctor's offices. But the final book I read was a nonfiction book I read, I should say, was Psychology of Intelligence Analysis by Richards J. Hubert Jr., and that was a good book. He was a CIA operative or director for decades, and it was kind of just thinking about the way you think and how that helps or hurts or hinders your analysis capabilities. If you do any kind of analytical work, it's definitely worth a read. So I will say, I've only read 17 books this year, but I have read 3 pretty chunky nonfiction books, so that's, I think, more nonfiction books than I read all of last year, so that's a bonus. Also, I read a 4th nonfiction book, The Bridget Endau by James A. Michener, which, no idea where it is, but it is about the Hungarian Revolution in 1956 against the Russian communist occupation of the country. And I think that I read that sort of right before some of the stuff with Ukraine started happening, so I think it was a timely read, and people, and I think it was told in a very storied way, but James Michener essentially went and got interviews with a bunch of people afterwards who, like, survived the conflict or escaped Hungary, and was able to put together this story, and it was very interesting, and I recommend people read it. And it's a really short book, so it's not too intense. But so yeah, 4 nonfiction books. And then I read The Witcher 0.5, which I don't know if that's the first one you're supposed to read, but it's called The Last Wish. I'm trying to read a few of them before I start the show. I liked it. It was alright. I have a feeling that's not the first one I was supposed to read, so if you know which one I should have started with, please drop it in the description below. Because I felt like I jumped around a lot, and that might just be the style of the books, but I felt like you just were, like, listening to The Witcher do a few things, and he would, like, go somewhere else and do some things, but that also might be, but it all didn't seem chronological, so I'm not sure if that's where I was supposed to start, but it was pretty good. I read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I enjoyed that book. I wish more could have been done with it, but I did enjoy it overall. I wish they could have focused on, like, some of the mental illness more and not just, like, been like, okay, well, she doesn't want to die anymore, and that's the problem solved. So I wish they could have, like, done more with that. And also maybe spend more time in the lifetime she lived with the other people who were jumpers, so to speak. Like, having more interactions like that, I think, would have been cool in the book. I read The Bear and the Nightingale, which is number 1 in the Winter Night trilogy, and I really enjoyed it. I hope to read number 2 soon. It had a little bit of a slow start, but then it was the way it was kind of like Russian folk tales and creepy. It almost had like an eerie winter night. Well, winter night is the day that they had to like save or destroy the magic or everyone would die kind of thing by. But it was really good. I liked it a lot, and I have the second one to read soon. I read Mort, which is a Discworld novel by Terry Pratchett. Essentially, we see someone who needs a job to be an apprentice. He becomes the apprentice of death and goes on adventures and helps people to die and sometimes people to not die. So that's an interesting conundrum he's not supposed to maybe do. But alas, it was good stuff. Sorry if you hear chewing. There's a dog over here. I read The Winnie the Pooh #1 by A.A. Milne, and it was such a sweet read, very nostalgic. I'd never actually read the books, but Winnie the Pooh was one of my favorite stories as a kid, and I loved, honestly, getting to spend some time in the story. It was beautiful. I'm just very happy. Which is why I followed it with reading Sully by John Grisham for a book club I'm in, and my god, that book is hard, it's sad, but it's very captivating, and I was a little, like, nervous about it because it's a sports book. I did play a lot of sports in my life, but I've never been really into reading the basketball books or whatever, so I liked it a lot. It's very different, according to my friend, than other John Grisham books because it's not very law-heavy, but it was a beautiful, beautiful story, with a twist that I did not love at the end, but I understand why it was done. About a kid who makes the South Sudanese national basketball team, travels to America and ends up having to stay there because his village and most of his family gets destroyed while he's in country, and therefore he has no home to go back to. So we get to follow Sully in America, going to college, playing basketball, ultimately becoming this all-star basketball player through copious amounts of hard work. It's not just like he's an all-star. Like, this kid works so hard to become the player he is. I would just like to caveat that. And then we also get to see, like, his family that did survive and, like, their journey into refugee camps in both South Sudan and a different country as well in Africa. And it was just, I think certain parts of the book were done really well, certain things I would have liked to have seen more of, and I did not like the twist at the end, but I still gave the book 4 out of 5 stars because it was so good. So I think the twist was a choice to be, like, to kind of totally catch the readers off guard, and to kind of do it for the shock and awe value, and to speed up the thing that they have to cover at the end of the book. But like I told my book club, I would have read 200 more pages for, like, the book to last a lot longer, so this twist did not have to happen. But, I mean, I get it. Whatever. Moral of the story, it was a great book, and I think everybody should read it. Just brace yourself for, like, a lot of things and a lot of emotions throughout the whole course of the book. I also read the Avatar: Rise of Kyoshi and the Shadow of Kyoshi novels, which I was very pleasantly surprised by. I've always been a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've been reading the graphic novels now as an adult, and it's just fun, and I actually did the audiobooks for those two because they were free, and we were out of Audible credits, so I was needing books to listen to for free, and they were really well done, and I really enjoyed them a lot, and it was kind of cool to get an insight into an avatar you don't really hear much about, except for, like, in the show you see a little bit of the avatar Kyoshi being, like, a really big woman with big feet. And, like, kind of a little bit brutal, but you really get to see a lot about her and why she is this way. And I hope they make more novels, because I would like to continue reading them. And if they did that with some of the other past avatars, that would be cool also. And last but not least, I read The Devil Colony by James Rollins. It's the Sigma Force novel number 7. With the Sigma Force novels, you can read them in order or not in order, and that's mostly okay. You miss a few, like, off-page relationship things, but most of that happens off-page anyway, so it's not, like, too big of a deal to be like, oh, they got together, but, like, they wouldn't have gotten together on page anyways, so cool, that's fine. They're just married now. That's all we got to do. Stand by. Hey, puppy. What you doing? Don't eat my plants. Anyways, I just was trying to make sure the dog wasn't eating my plants. But yeah, so those are the 17 books I read, and this is the puppy, in the last 2.5 months, I think. What have you been up to reading? And I hope to come back soon with a bookshelf related video or two. I know for sure I want to break down my favorite shelf and my TBR shelf, and maybe a tour, but we'll see what happens. But thank you for sticking around and bearing with me and being patient and all of that. But I will catch y'all next time, hopefully being less disturbed by a dog in my books.